My name is Michelle Burbidge, and I'm an integrative healing practitioner. I'm also an enthusiast of emotional transformation, and my passion is really helping people heal from chronic false beliefs that result in emotional chaos and distress. The biggest thing that has affected me in my life is recognizing how we as humans live our life from a place of fear, and how that fear creates our false beliefs, and how that really flavors every single interaction that we have in the world. And I guess I recognize that my family has always been very religious. They've been very engaged in organized religion. And so I started going to church as a young child, like a lot of us do, and I never resonated with the religion that my family followed. And what I felt, even really young, probably 5 or 6 years old, I felt as though there was a lot of fear, and fear of God. And even at that moment in time, way back then, I always thought that the core of my being, I felt as though God wasn't something to be feared. And it didn't matter that, I had all of the adults in my life telling me that, and it's not that they necessarily preached fear, but there was an idea of, if you don't do this, then something is going to happen. There wasn't an overarching sense of love. And there was a sense of, if you don't do X, Y, and Z, then there's going to be some kind of a massive consequence in the end. And so that was the overarching idea that came from my experience of organized religion. And I know that that's not everybody's experience. Having said that, as I went through my life, I recognized that every single thing that we encounter in our life, we filter through a lens, our own lens, and that's based on whatever it is that we've encountered in our life up until that point. And what we do is we create a false belief around that. So I could have an interaction with you, and I could feel something negative coming from you, for example, and that is a neutral event. That is you being you, and is me perceiving what I'm taking from my interaction with you. And you could be the exact same with every single person in your life, and the person that you're interacting with will take something different from that. And if we feel negative about it, if we feel not at peace about it, then what we're doing is we're overlaying that with a false belief that we have about ourselves. And that false belief is based on fear. And as I was going through my life and started getting more and more evidence of this, and started being able to apply psychological practices to this kind of information, it just became more and more clear for me. And then I found something really interesting. I sat down one day, I was upset about something, and I had just been diagnosed with a couple of different autoimmune issues. And my doctor had told me that there's no cure. You're just going to have to deal with this, and you have this for the rest of your life, and, kind of suck it up. And I said, well, I'd like a second opinion. So she sent me to some specialists, and the specialist said, yeah, you just kind of have to deal with this. This isn't going to be something that you recover from. You just have to learn how to live with it. And I wasn't really happy with that. But anyway, I started to get anxiety because I thought, there's no way I'm going to be able to live my life with this. And I started to get really depressed. And I remember sitting there, I started seeking a lot of different spiritual paths, because I thought, okay, if there's nothing in science that can help me, and there's nothing in my training that can help me, then maybe spirituality can help me. So I started going back to religion. And again, I just felt that sense of fear from that. So I started following, kind of a new age thought leaders like Wayne Dyer and Byron Katie. And interestingly, everything that they said came back to something called A Course in Miracles. And are you familiar with A Course in Miracles? No. Okay. So the idea of A Course in Miracles, it was written in the 70s. They say it was transcribed by someone called Helen Schuckman. And she believes that it was a download from, that she was channeling a higher message. The voice that she puts to it is Jesus. There's going to be a lot of people who are like, well, that's not true. And a lot of people in my own life kind of really push back against that idea. But regardless, the message that comes through resonates with a lot of people. And what that message is, basically, have no fear. And that's something that's resonated with me my entire life, is just live your life without having fear. And it's difficult for all of us to get past these false beliefs, because we have all of this information in our life that's coming to us saying, well, the world is dangerous. And depending on, we can look at it too from different perspectives, different lenses, and saying, well, of course I'm going to have fear. And that maybe it's easier for me to say that because I'm a person of privilege in certain areas, and it might be easier for me to look at it as having no fear. But as I go through it with my clients and really break down each thing and filter it through the lens of A Course in Miracles, which essentially suggests, the idea of having fear is what's enabling you not to live from a place of love. And so as we go through it, we're able to process all of these untruths that we found through our lives. And we've been kind of placing them as our benchmark, so that when we feel these things, when they come at us, we go back to that spot we were when we were little and develop the false belief. And then, we're having a hard time. We're triggered by that, right? We're triggered by that feeling that we felt so long ago. And then that brings up the fear all over again. And so we're all living from this place of fear. And so what I found, and the most profound thing for me that I found, is that if we're able to find the false belief, we're able to get rid of the fear. And I think in my life, it's only through getting rid of the fear that we're able to live from a place of love. And so that's what my spirituality path has taught me. We're not full of guilt and blame and shame. And that if we can stop putting that on ourselves, then we can stop seeing it in other people as well. And until we don't see it in other people, until we don't see guilt and blame and shame externally, we can't see it in ourselves either. So it's kind of like as within, so without. If we have the fear outside of us, then we're going to have the fear inside of us as well. Yeah, for me, that's what it is.
What's your faith now?
Yeah, so, A Course in Miracles is a daily practice of one lesson each day that walks us through letting go of what we have around us, letting go of the idea that the life that we've built here is our reality. So that is what I would do every day. I do believe that this was a message from Jesus. I believe that it was a modern message. And so I identify myself as a Christian. Course in Miracles doesn't completely line up with the Bible in certain ways. So as an example, like the crucifixion, instead of believing that it would be God giving his son to save us from our sins, A Course in Miracles doesn't actually believe in that we're sinful. And so essentially the difference there would be what it would say. It's that not that the Bible wasn't right, but that we've misinterpreted it through the ages. And that because Christ was not fearful, one of the premises of A Course in Miracles is give all to all. And what that is that if I have something and I'm living from a place of love and not fear, then I don't have any boundaries. And so that is an extreme example. So the crucifixion would be, if you need to take my life, then take my life. And so that is kind of a guiding principle to basically say, once we get rid of our fear, we can get rid of our boundaries. And we can't until then, because until then, boundaries are really helpful for us as humans. But until that point, once we get rid of those boundaries and we can say, I'm standing here without any fear, whatever you ask me for, I can provide it. And that's not true just for our families and our loved ones, but that's true for anyone who asks us. So if someone were to come to us and say, this is what I need, then we just hand it over and say, this is what, if you need it, then, and I have it, then you can have that. And so that is my guiding principle. I try to be able to, as much as I possibly can, to live from that perspective of give all to all. So just giving as much of myself as I can. Obviously we're humans. We need to be able to live as well. But I just try in my life, I believe that what we're aiming for is to try to give as much of ourselves to other people, of our gifts to other people as we can, and just spread that as much as we're able to do that.
What made you feel confident in what you were doing?
I have followed near-death experiencers, and I don't know if you follow that at all. So there are a lot of people who claim to have, it's verified that they're, for all intents and purposes, their life is not happening in their body anymore. Their brain is not functioning. Their heart is not beating. So they are not with us anymore. And they have an experience. And then modern medicine is able to either start their heart again, or whatever it is that they sort of bring them back from the brink. They're very close to death. When you start listening to these people, regardless what religion they were before, what language they spoke, where they came from on the planet, they all have a very similar experience. And the similar experience they have, and that is that it is forgiveness. You haven't done anything to be judged for. There is no judgment. It's forgiveness. And so what they describe is when they go into the light or whatever it is that they describe, meeting a guide. If they come from an organized religion background, they often describe it as God. If they come from an agnostic or atheist or other belief structure, they might describe it as something else, but it's always the same thing. It's this very peaceful, loving energy, and it wraps them. And it says, you're safe now. They get to experience every moment of their life. And instead of experiencing with judgment, they get to experience it with the sense of, how did I impact that person that I touched? So if we impacted them in a positive way, then we get to experience the joy that we brought to them. And if we impacted them in a negative way, then we get to experience the pain that we brought to them. And this is without judgment. It's just so that we can experience the idea that we are all one and that what we do to other people, we ultimately feel in ourselves. So what we're doing externally and the energy that we project outward is ultimately what we're going to feel in ourselves. We're all part of the same. And what precipitated my belief in that was that my dad actually had a near-death experience before he passed away. And I had never heard of it prior to that. And I didn't really even know what it was after that until I started just synchronistically, these things started popping up as they do sometimes. I don't know if you believe in synchronicity, but things start popping up. And then I just started hearing more and more about it. And I started looking into this, like, what is this near-death experience thing? And then I recognized that my father had had a near-death experience. And it wasn't the same as that. He didn't actually pass away. It was a little bit different. But yeah, and then when I started looking into it, I thought, this is it. As soon as I felt it, as soon as I started reading it, I've been practicing A Course in Miracles for 10 years. And the longer I practice it, the less fear I have. And I feel like the more love I'm able to share in my life and the less judgment I have, which that was a big thing for me. I was very judgmental. I had a lot of righteous indignation.
When you talk about that, the conversation that people are having about the near-death experience and that feeling of peace, love, and enlightenment, I've heard a different argument about that being still a different entity against God that is coming as an angel of light.
There was another thing that happened to me as well. And that was when I found out about the Gnostic Gospels. I don't know if you're familiar with the Gnostic Gospels.
Yeah.
Okay. So the other thing that I found out when I heard about that, I got really excited and I brought it to my family and I said, you're not going to believe this, but they found some Gospels from all of the other disciples. And they have a very different idea of what Jesus was than, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And I thought, oh my God, we want to read this. We need to find out like what they all said, especially the Gospel of Thomas. And it was really, and Mary as well. And so I got really excited about it. And I thought I need to share this. And my family took it to their pastor at the church and said, hey, what about this? And they said, it's heretical and we can't read it. And I thought it struck me like a knife because one, these Gospels, a lot of the teachings in them, I might cry. A lot of the teachings in them really aligned with how I felt my whole life. And again, more loving. And a lot of the Gospels that I felt were retained and not burned centuries ago were much more of a controlling, judgmental, sort of fear-based structure that potentially may have helped the powers that be at that time to retain control over the people. And so once I saw these and I thought, well, we at least have to give it, just look at it, just read it and see what you feel, see how it makes you feel. But it was dismissed out of hand as heretical. And I can't even read that. And so to me, I think that if that is how we're coming at it, if it is that we're not going to look at anything that doesn't align with the gospel that we know and that we are upholding, if we can't even look at any other evidence, then I don't doubt that there would be a backlash against a loving, accepting, non-judgmental, because if that's indeed how it happened many, many years ago, that the bits and pieces were kept that were sort of in line with the idea of the day, then I can understand why there would be a narrative now about, well, no, after you die, that's not what's happening. It's something else. And it's not that, it's something evil. And don't do that because that's scary. And let's just stick with what we have here. And let's still be scared of, the idea of judgment. Let's still go with that because this is where we are and we don't want to risk changing and we don't want to look at any other information. There's a lot of reasons that the church and organized religion perhaps might not want to recognize additional information. I think there's a lot of fear that if we become non-judgmental, everything will just all go to hell. Do you see what I'm saying? Like everything will just all fall apart. If we stop placing ideas of what's right and wrong and good and bad, and we stop thinking of ourselves as being sinners, once we lose the idea of guilt, blame, and shame, we actually become better people, not more dangerous to one another, not more hateful to one another. We actually become more loving people. But I'm thinking that maybe that's too big of a risk.
So we're going to go into the game and I'm going to share my screen, and what you'll see here on the screen is a list of numbers and letters.
Okay.
Pick two of them. You can pick 2 letters or 2 numbers or a letter and a number.
The first 2 that jumped out for me was 29 and 74.
And we're going to watch 29. And after we watch it, there's an assignment. That assignment is only 1 minute.
Okay, a minute. Oh, gosh.
Has anyone else noticed that the melanin deficient have quite literally aligned themselves with the devil, biblically speaking? Think about it. They've taken the Bible and Christianity as a whole, knowingly corrupted it, took it around the globe, indoctrinating and fear-mongering people into doing their bidding under the guise of being good Christians or good followers of Christ and not going to hell. And they're still using that tactic now. The Bible says that the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy, does it not? What all have they done? They've stolen everything. They've stolen land, people, money, credit for other people's work, finite resources. Right now, they're actively stealing history by rewriting it and whitewashing it and eradicating anything that paints them in a negative light. Yet they've convinced the masses that petty theft and looting is worse than the atrocities they've committed. And even more audaciously, they've made Black people the face of crime in this country. They've killed millions of people in some of the most heinous ways, and they're actively defending the extermination of a certain group of people right now. They're destroying the planet, burning the Amazon, which are the lungs of the earth, killing us off to make more money. And then they go to the pulpit on Sunday and preach about how the love of money is the root of all evil. But look at what you've done. You play into those systems every single day. Those systems of marginalization and oppression, you play into them every day. They will preach that and then come up with another way to harm us for profit. Look at the systems that have been created due to greed. For-profit prison systems, this murderous healthcare system, predatory credit systems. Homelessness is being created because it's now being criminalized. So if you're homeless, it basically translates to slave labor. Because if you're homeless, you go to a homeless shelter, there's no room, they're going to kick you out. If you're on the streets homeless, which is now a crime in a lot of places, you're going to go to jail, where you're going to be forced to do free labor, slave labor. They'll say all of these things and then stand on these type of principles. And then so many of us still look at them as symbols of success. I don't look at them and aspire to be anything that they are, have anything that they have, because I know how they've come to acquire it. And y'all, this may be a little harsh, but it's time for everybody to grow the fuck up. Religious principles are keeping us back. And I'm not saying that everything in the Bible is wrong. There's certain things that I apply, but there are certain tenets of that faith that I'm not going to apply to my life because they don't resonate with me. When it comes to helping the poor, loving people, not judging people, you know, the actual teachings of Christ, absolutely. But anything meant to hold me back or make me feel like I'm less than, I'm not keeping that. And we got to get real about that. Look at the way that the stories are set up. You're telling me that I, as a female, a giver of life, came from the rib of a man? That's a way to make you think that you came second when you didn't. Women are the givers of life. Female is the default. Every mammal, including humans, in their embryonic stage began as female. They may develop into male later, but female is the default. So how did you create me if I'm the reproductive blueprint? It's not true. And we got to stop believing stuff just because we've been told this since we were a child. If it defies your sense of logic and reasoning, throw it out. And I've always been able to do that. That's why deconstructing wasn't hard for me. As soon as something doesn't make sense, I can throw it away. That's how it's supposed to be, because that creates balance. Now, religious people will tell you that you're being lukewarm, but that's another tactic to make you push yourself into religious extremism, which isn't healthy either. You need to be able to think critically. Religion does not push that. It wants you to do the opposite. And you got to stop falling for that. Like I said, you don't have to throw away every single thing, but there are certain things that don't resonate and shouldn't resonate because they're false. Look at the story of Adam and Eve. The reason that misogyny and patriarchy are perpetuated and run rampant in this country is because of principles and stories like this. You're telling me that God gave Adam a specific order. Eve gave him the fruit of the tree that he wasn't supposed to eat from. He ate it knowing he wasn't supposed to. And now we all live in a world of sin. Women go through unbearable childbirths and labor pains because they're being punished. Punished for what? Adam's decision. So they've been holding us accountable for the actions of men forever. And those stories set that precedent. And so many women will peddle these stories. And I don't understand that. You're peddling your own oppression. They have reduced you to basically childbearer and slave. And you guys are okay with that. It's time to start thinking for ourselves, y'all. I understand that it's hard to break those shackles, but you have to. You don't have to throw out God. You don't have to throw out Christ, but throw out anything that's going to keep you in bondage. That's where we need to be. And we all should be on the same page with that. Too many of us have been conditioned to just take things in that aren't true. I've seen people on here battling or debating creationism and evolution as if both are backed by empirical evidence when only one is. The other is basically folklore. But they're arguing, and you can see the cognitive dissonance just whipping their ass because they just can't bring themselves to believe that they've been taught something that wasn't true. We're too old for that, y'all. We're too grown to be following things like that when we know better. So we have to do better, period. That's just what it is. And like I said, I don't know how people can look to these people, see the things that they've acquired, see it as abundance when you know how they've come to acquire it. Nothing about what they have or the way they got it makes me want it in that same way. And it's hard for me to want to share faith with people who I know don't give a damn about me until they need me to be on their side. Is that not what we've been seeing our entire lives? We got to get it together, y'all. Anything that doesn't make sense, throw it out. You're not being lukewarm, you're being balanced, and that's where we need to be.
Wow.
All right, so that's the clip. All right, so this is how we play the assumption auditor.
Mm-hmm.
So for a minute on the clock, we're looking for assumptions, and you have to identify where the assumption lies. So,
oh gosh, okay.
Just for the creator, it could be your own assumptions. It could also be assumptions of people outside. Anything that she said that could have been assumptions. So for a minute, we're trying to identify just assumptions and why we consider them to be assumptions, and or why we predict people will make assumptions based off of this particular piece of content. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I get it.
All right. So 1 minute on the clock. Let me know when you're ready.
Yeah.
Take a deep breath.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Ready?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, so, I mean, everything that she said, I think that it resonates with me. Everything she said that I agreed with. Having said that, I don't know that it's necessarily a race issue from the term that she used, which I didn't hear at the beginning. But I think that the assumption is that we don't agree, and that there are practices at work, and that's another assumption. But, oh man, this is hard.
5 more seconds.
How many more seconds?
1.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that was way too hard for me. I can't do it in 1 minute. I can't.
It's okay. And just know that because this game is so intense, you only have 1 minute, I would encourage you or challenge you, once the clip is up, take it, maybe write in the comments, whatever you wanted to say more.
Yeah. I'd like to watch that video again. If you could send me a link, then I'd like to watch it again. Because I think that there's a lot that I want to say about that. And I work with a lot of groups, and to picture it as a sense of that kind of dichotomy now, that because as I'm listening to her, I'm hearing, but I didn't get who she was pitting it against. And so it's really, really interesting that that's the perception that she has, and that's the assumption that she has. So yeah, I want to watch it again because I agree with a lot of her issues. Do I agree that, I'd have to watch it again to see what she's actually saying. So, because I think I missed a lot of it just because I didn't hear who she was talking about in the very beginning. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, yeah, take it, make some new content out of it, and just really kind of dig into that critical thinking. And if you want to talk about it, sometimes we do it between sessions, but because I said I was going to keep it short, I will, in respecting your time. But if you wanted to kind of talk about how you felt, the emotions, or anything that you want, that was a takeaway for you, you can.
Yeah, I need more than a minute.
We'll go ahead on to the next clip.
Okay. Oh, there's another one. Oh gosh. Okay.
This is the last one, and then we'll be done.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, you have to be really careful when choosing your friends, because a lot of women like the aesthetic of friends, but they do not value friendship. They don't even know what real friendship is. And when I tell you no idea, I mean have absolutely no idea. And when you're unaware of this, you'll think you have friends when you really just have people who don't mind having space fillers. Like, you may be their friend, but they're not your friend. They'll use you to have a full table at their birthday parties. They'll have you out here spending your hard-earned money and do not give a flip for you. Also, y'all can do that little boomerang passport thing that all the girls do when they get ready to leave the country. You'll be thinking you're out spending quality time with your friends. All the time, they're only there so they can get a video for their stories on social media of y'all doing toast with shots or something. But where are those friends when life starts lifing? When you lose a parent, when you lose a job, when you're having financial hardship or going through a divorce or having problems with your children. I said all this to say, be sure that the people you consider friends don't consider you a friend for aesthetic reasons, but in some way, your life impacts their life. Because when people don't find value in you, they'll use you for the things they do find valuable. And in this day and age, social media, clout. So stop participating before you start evaluating what you really mean to these girls.
Oh, wow. That's another really powerful one.
So here is the assignment, woman on the clock.
The thing that I would change about that is perspective. And so she is coming at it with the perspective that the people in her life seem to be using her for some reason. And so perhaps if she has some false beliefs, that it might be coming across as that's what they're doing, when really they might be trying to connect, but she has a block there that makes her think that other women are using her for something that for their own personal gain. Whereas if they're trying to connect and she's not recognizing the fact that of how they communicate and how they're reaching out to her, then I would probably improve the lens that I'm using to look at those relationships and trying to look at them through the lens of the other person's perspective and how it makes me feel to feel that way. And is there another way that I can look at it that makes me feel better? And what I mean by that, so close. I That's hard.
It's gamified.
That's really fun. And actually, you know what? It helps you try to focus your thoughts in a way that is very succinct and saying what you mean in a really short period of time and saying what you mean in a way that can convey your message without a whole lot of words. And I've just realized that I am really bad at that. I need to practice that.
I hope that because the world is so fast paced as well, that we want, short content, that we realize that we probably just need to take time and just think.
Yeah. And sometimes the first thing that pops into our mind isn't really what we believe. Sometimes the first thing that pops into our mind is what's coming from our fear.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So,
good.
And when we think about it and we give it a little bit of time to percolate, we recognize the fact that that's actually not what it is. It's something a lot deeper. We believe something a lot different than what we originally came spewing out of our mouth when we had no time to think.
Yeah. Ooh, that's good. I like that, Michelle. Well, I appreciate you sharing your time with me. I had so much fun. I knew it was going to be a good time when I see you.
Yeah. It was awesome. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that is the end of today's show, guys. If you have any insight or you played with us, let us know in the comments. I will be sharing a little blurb about Michelle and her website at the end. So please go ahead and stick through it if you want to connect with Michelle. And you'll also see her information in the description box below.
Awesome.
Until next time, everyone, hold on to you as much as you can. Hold on to your health, your well-being, and your mind. Bye.
Yeah.